Throughout all the channels of this great industry, the vast majority of businesses are independently owned. And for many of those independently owned businesses, they are family businesses. It shouldn't be a surprise to any of you, and I have said it many a times on this show, that in the coming years, we are going to see a mass exit of personnel from this industry. And more appropriately, a mass retirement. And with that, we will see a passing of the torch. So if you are someone who will be involved in this transition, whether selling, stepping away, or completely retiring, and possibly on the other side of purchasing, stepping up, or inheriting, and you're looking for options and information on how to best handle and process this transition, then this episode is for you. As together, we are building the future.
This is the Building the Future podcast. I am your host, the Lumberjack, Brett Thorne. On this show, we explore topics including construction, building materials, real estate, remodeling, the housing market, industry news, new products and trends, technology, government, everything you need for building the future.
Welcome back to the Building the Future podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brett Thorne. And on this episode, I was recently on a webinar that was talking about business transitions within a family. And since then, I've gotten to know the speaker on the show just a little bit. And it's an honor today to welcome to the show from Kyle Danner Solutions for Family Business, Mr. Kyle Danner.
Hey, Brett. Great to meet you today, and thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So, Kyle, to start off, let's kind of get you caught up to speed with the listeners. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then kind of how you got to the position you are in today?
Great. Well, I probably for like just a lot of the folks who are listening today, I started working in the family business when I was a little kid. We were joking about, free labor in a family business. I started working when I was 4 years old. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. And after a career in the United States Marine Corps, he got out and owned and operated several businesses. And when I came along, he had a courier service that he ran out of the spare bedroom next to the one that I grew up in our family home. So, really for me, family and business were always one and the same. And we had several businesses as I grew up, and all of us kids worked them in one way or another. By the time I graduated college, it was the family business was a small print shop that my brother and sister owned. And I joined with the intention of staying 1 year, but 1 year turned into 17 years. And during that time, we grew that to be the fifth largest printing company in Kansas City. And so we grew it from, about a dozen or so employees and a couple $1 million in revenue to over 70 employees and over $18 million in revenue. And we were recognized as a leader in our field or our industry because of the type of printing we did. And along the way, I became an owner. Gosh, about 12 years ago, 12 years ago, realized there was a need for a change because the seat that I was in the business, I was no longer a fit for it. And in looking around for the business, there were really no other seats. There was no other place for me that made sense. It didn't make sense to try and create something. It didn't make sense for me to try and get the training that we needed for that position. Really, it was just, what made the most sense was for me to sell my interests, and I left the business. And so at the time, I was doing IT project management and kind of leading some website development, customer service support. Brett, I am not a project manager and I don't know anything about IT. And it was just, we were an entrepreneurial family, and it was just, we had this thing that we needed in our business, and I just kind of saw it through, but it was at the point to where it just needed a real true IT professional in that seat. So the business needed to get what it needed to grow, and I needed to get out of the way. So I sold my interest and I left, went back to school for a degree in counseling. And I always joke that people can make whatever connection they want between 17 years in the family business and wanting to go into the mental health profession. But as I was wrapping up my degree, I kind of discovered this area from a class project about family business advising, and that there was a way in which you can, help, have a happy and healthy family and a happy and healthy business. And there are ways you can bring the two together. And as I was reading the literature in the space, it's like, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity here. Because also what we're experiencing right now is this huge, generational wealth transfer. The baby boomers are starting to think about retiring, or they are retiring. And so much of their wealth is wrapped up in their businesses, and they are looking to either keep the business in the family, sell the business, or whatever that next chapter in that process might look like. And I thought, there's an opportunity here. Because what I saw is that there's a lot of people doing great work around the financial, the legal, the strategic planning, but people were avoiding the family side of things because it was there's conflict, there's communication, there's all that family dynamics that go on in a business. And the CPAs, the attorneys, the accountants, the fractional CFOs and marketing professionals, they didn't want to touch that. And I thought, here's an opportunity. So for the first couple of years of my practice, I went out and I did, kind of conflict and communication, some mediation, some coaching around that, trying to still figure out, where I landed. And what I found is that along the way, I also needed another skill set to truly understand what are the options for transitioning the business. So I went to obtain my certification as exit planning advisor from the Exit Planning Institute. So we call that the CEPA. And so I got a big picture overview of how to help business owners build value in their business while they were getting ready to pass it on or to sell it. But continuing to be frustrated because I was looking because families appreciated what I was doing for them on the family side. And they kept saying, what can you do for our business? Because they needed help getting the business organized. And I fell upon and discovered the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And it's outlined in a book by Gino Wickman. It's called Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business. And Gino started working and creating EOS because he came from a family business. And he's a visionary entrepreneur himself. And so about a little over 2 years ago, I kind of switched my focus to helping family businesses implement EOS as part of their transition plan. And so that's about 80% of what I do today. And the other 20% is facilitating family meetings, all related around exit planning or succession planning, and coaching advisors who work with family businesses.
So how do you have time for any of that? Because I would almost think that conflict in the family would eat up all of your time.
It's the families I work with, kind of when they land at my doorstep, there's usually been a big blow up of some kind or another. There's been a crisis, and it's like, okay. And that's the thing about human beings.
That's the reason they're calling you, Kyle.
Exactly. That's why they're calling me. But in all of that conflict and all that drama that's going on, that everybody likes to talk about and gossip about and point fingers at, I so often find people who really want to make things better. Mm-hmm. They really want the family relationships to be healthy and whole. They care and love for one another, but they also care and love the employees that work for them, because they don't just see their employees, Brett. They see their employees and all the families and all the mouths to feed that they very much have that personal responsibility for. I mean, that's one of the things I love about family business. It's one of the things I love about entrepreneurs.
It's part of the family, so it's just a different family, really. It's your work family.
You're absolutely right. It's your work family. You genuinely care about them and you want what's best for them as well because they see the business as a legacy. So even though there's all this drama and all this conflict going on, at the root of it is that there's people who truly want to do what's right and they want to find a way to fix it with their relationships with one another so they can grow the business or take care of one another, whatever the case may be. So, there's all that stuff going on, on the surface, but it really, when you get down to it, they want to have those good, healthy, whole relationships. They want to be able to sit around the dinner table on Sunday or during the holidays and enjoy one another's company.
Kyle, can you give me a little more definition and description of EOS?
Brett, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it was created by Gino Wickman. And he comes from a family business himself. And when Gino turned around and grew his family business and exited, and he worked with a lot of other entrepreneurs, he realized he had a real knack and a passion for the art and science of running a truly great entrepreneurial organization. And so he went about creating EOS, which is really just a set of simple tools and a proven process designed to help business owners and their leadership teams get better at three things we call vision, traction, and healthy. Vision is just getting everybody 100% on the same page, moving the same direction with a plan to get them there. Traction is instilling discipline and accountability with the leadership team so they're working on every piece of that vision. And healthy is helping them become a more open, functional, cohesive team because so often they're not. And we find that as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the company, to where everybody is 100% on the same page of the vision. Everybody's executing that vision with discipline and accountability. And you've created a culture of great people that you enjoy spending your time with. And I'm very passionate about EOS because I've seen it work, but it's also a proven process. I'm part of a community of over 400 implementers. It's worked with over 15,000 companies, and we've done over 88,000 session days. And the thing about it is, if you are considering a transition in your family business, or you want to grow your family's business, it is the process, it's the tools, it's the path, the structure and the process that will get you there. And the great thing about it is that it's an open system. There are no secrets. Traction, get a grip on your business, teaches you how to implement it. All the tools are available out there at the eosworldwide.com website. People hire implementers like myself because they want to move faster so they can focus on their business. And it's a simple system. It is written for entrepreneurial-minded businesses, entrepreneurial-minded family businesses. So if you are really struggling with how to realize that vision, how to get the right people in the right seats, how to execute to get you to where you want with your vision, I would encourage you all to check it out. And even if you want a copy of the book, I'll even send you a copy of the book for free. Just email me at kyle@kyledanner.com and I'll put it in the mail to you.
I want to say that I really loved the term serial entrepreneur. And I know you said it was your father that was kind of had many entrepreneurial roles.
My dad was very much a visionary. So there's two things about my dad. My dad was very much a visionary. He always had 1,000 ideas of great things that were going to make so much money. And he could only stick with an idea for so long, and then he'd get bored with it and he'd move on to the next thing. Or the business would get so big, get to a certain size where he had to start hiring managers, and he didn't want to have to manage people, so he would sell and start over again. And the thing that what has drawn me to EOS and what I have appreciated about successful entrepreneurs is you have those visionaries. They have the ideas, they can, people just gravitate towards them. They set the culture, they manage the big relationships. They're the creative thinkers. But you got to pair them with somebody that, using EOS language, we call an integrator, the one who's actually going to be able to execute on the idea, that has the discipline that can get into the grind. And so oftentimes people think of like a chief operations officer, an operations person. And you need to pair those two together because The integrator needs the visionary's big idea to get it started, and the visionary needs the integrator and the team around him to be able to execute on that idea.
Yeah, and I've said before on a lot of things when it comes to business related. Number one, you got to have the right people on the bus. But then number two, they've got to be in the right seat on the bus, just like you're talking about. It's all got to integrate together. It's all got to work and flow together. The gears have got to be aligned. And I love how you talked about when you were part of your family business, you were doing IT and you were doing the project management. And those were two things that you really, number one, didn't have a lot of experience in and probably didn't have much passion for them. And that's a tough call and a tough decision to make, to say, hey, you know what? I'm not right for these roles. We need to find the person that truly is. If we want this business to work and flow at peak performance at the highest level it can, we've got to have, again, the right people on the bus, and they've got to be in the right seat on the bus.
Absolutely. I have worked with families before to where it seems, so what happens is, you start a business, everybody pitches in, because you're in survival mode. You got to keep the lights on. You got to meet payroll. You got to get the work out the door, and they don't. And so everybody just does what needs to be done.
You wear a lot of hats. You have to.
Exactly, and you have to. You don't have the resources to hire a bunch of people. Well, the difficulty with that is that lays down a culture. It lays down a set of habits. It lays down the way things are done. And while it's admirable at launching a business, you reach a point to where you really got to step back and wipe the slate clean and create the ideal structure, and making sure that the people are doing the things, just like you say, they're the right people for the right seats. Because I've run into families before to where it seems like someone needs to leave the business, but once you start learning what it is they can do and what the business needs, it's like, they don't need to leave the business. We just need to put them in another position to where they can really grow and flourish. And so, I run into that quite frequently.
When people go to get out of the business, whether they want to retire, whether they want to step back, whether they want to sell, obviously there's options out there. So let's talk about just transitioning it in the family. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of that. What have you seen in your years of experience of working with family businesses?
Well, I think one of the big pros is that, the generation coming up, they're steeped in the business. They know the business. They understand the history of it. They know the players. And so all of that kind of that institutional knowledge, that tribal knowledge that's really hard to transfer, it's already there in the generation that's coming in to lead. It's also less risky for the family because you know who the players are. Okay, and people know what's expected of them. They know the products, they know the services, they know the customers, and so it's an easier transition for people to make. Okay, so that's really the big the pros, and usually it's a lot less expensive because you're not having to do a whole business evaluation. You're not having to do a whole bunch of legal work, anything. It's an easier handoff that everybody feels good about. And so that's some of the big pros of it. But those same pros can also be the cons, and the fact that if you grew up in the family business, it's all you know. And so you maybe don't always have that outside experience that someone could benefit from on how to run a business or to see how other businesses are run. So that's a difficult. That's a challenge for the business to overcome. You're not getting the benefit of outside experience. The other thing is you've got one generation to the next. There's going to be cultural change. So if you've got the leading generation now, they're the visionaries, they're the entrepreneurs, they're the creative thinkers. But this generation that's coming in they're much more steeped in execution. Okay. That's going to require different skill sets, from people. And what it could very well mean is that, legacy employees who've been around for years, they may no longer be needed. There may not be a place for them because new family members are coming in. That can create some challenges. The cultural changes that are coming that need to be made, like especially what we're seeing now around labor about, the expectations that, the workforce has now about more flexibility, remote work and all that. That's creating a lot of cultural, shifts for families, and investing in people, because maybe that's something the business hasn't always done, just from a generational aspect. Like, we didn't do that. Well, now you have a workforce that's coming in that's demanding that you invest in them. So there's a whole bunch of generational changes that are going on as well that families have to navigate.
Okay. Now, is there certain industries you work with or that you specialize in with this, or have found that maybe there's more family businesses that are trying to do interfamily transfers?
I have worked in, I come from a manufacturing background, kind of a blue collar working class background. So, I've worked in manufacturing, I've done financial services, I've done professional services. So I've worked in a variety of industries. And I've worked anywhere from, a 3-person retail operation to a $40 million construction and engineering firm, and I've, everything in between. So, but what I find, the families who are really the most successful in this, in thinking about a transition and executing on it, is it's not industry, it's not employee size, it's not revenue. It's really about mindset. Is they're willing to be open and honest and vulnerable with each other. That vulnerability-based trust exists within the family. They have strong relationships. They're willing to listen to outside advisors and outside guidance. They've got a strong vision and a strong set of values. Maybe it's not that it's perfectly lined out or it's up on a wall or looking pretty on a website or anything, but they have a strong sense of who they are and what they want. Well, you just have to create clarity around it. So, I saw something that you had posted about the need for a vision. Well, it's clarifying that vision so everybody agrees on what that vision is. And so it's really going in with an open mind and an open heart to the change that's coming, and the grace and patience to help each other and be patient with each other through it. Those are the families that are successful.
One of the pieces in the webinar that you put on was called 5 Keys to a Successful Family Business Transition. What can you tell us about those, Kyle?
So anytime you think about a succession plan or an exit plan, it's a big, overwhelming thing to think about. For a business alone, let alone not even considering a family business that's involved. And I wanted to find a way to kind of help organize someone's thinking about it. So the 5 keys are to know yourself, know your family, think big picture, build value, and take the long view. And so when we think about know yourself, it is for the current generation, the leading generation, to have a clear picture on what their next chapter will look like, as well as what it's going to cost and how is the business going to pay for it. Okay, because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have somebody say, well, I'm going to step out of the business and I'll be around, to help out where needed. And there's confusion about what their role is. Okay. And because then they're like, are you in the business? Are you out of the business? What do you do? What are your responsibilities? And that just creates confusion for everybody. Okay. Because they still kind of have their hand in things. That doesn't mean you got to push them completely out. It's just making clarity around what are they going to do and how much is it going to cost now as the business is going to pay for it. Okay. It's also being clear about the generation that's coming in. Are they clear on why are they in the business? Okay. What's their reason for joining the business? Is it that they want to do the work? They have that desire to lead a business, to do sales, to run operations. Are they there out of obligation? They're there because the family needs them to step in for a time. So it's a reason, beyond themselves. Are they there because of greed? They want the money, fame, power that comes with running a business. Or are they there because they need a job and they don't know what else they're going to do with their lives? Now, we bounce, and all of us bounce in our lives between that desire, obligation, greed, and need. The one that I'm most concerned about when someone says is the last one, is need. I need this job because I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life. What that tells me is they don't have a strong sense of themselves at this point in their lives. And the last thing we want them to do is to come into the business and try and discover that within the family business, because that's probably not the place for them to do that. They kind of need to discover that on their own, because they might end up finding themselves in a position that they're not suited for, and there's a lot riding on that. So that's kind of the know yourself. The other is know your family. Just like current generation has to decide what they want for themselves, so does everybody else, and what is the role that the business is going to play in paying for that or financing that, or what role does the business play? It's also understanding how communication and conflict runs in the family, because the family arguments, those are well set patterns. So the things you argue with your family about, your brother and sister out when you're 4 years old, they're playing themselves out in the boardroom when you're 35 and 40 years old. And so it's understanding what those patterns are. And really the idea is how to break those patterns so that you can get some new energy, new ideas, new ways of thinking about things going. Thinking big picture. In family business advising, there is this 3-circle diagram of family, business, and ownership. You're talking to a family business advisor or consultant when they pull that thing out, because it's been around since the 80s. It's a classic. But it's really helpful in understanding, am I being a parent right now, or am I being the chief executive officer, or am I being the sole proprietor of the business? Family, business, and ownership, okay? Because each of those circles has different priorities, and so often those priorities come clashing together. And quite honestly, in a family business, you're wearing all the hats at the same time. You think about the dad who is concerned about his daughter, who's also sales manager, who's not delivering on whatever it is expected of her for whatever reason. And so you've got I'm a father who loves his daughter very much. I'm a business owner who needs sales to increase by 20% in his business, and I don't know if I've got the right person for the seat. And so there's that natural tension that exists.
Sure, that line between family and business it can be very blurry.
Oh, absolutely. It can be absolutely blurry.
And maybe non-existent.
Well, and you're absolutely right. It could be non-existent. And when we were talking earlier, you bring up something too, is that sometimes people, business owners, the family thinks of their employees as their extended family as well. And I appreciate the heart that's behind that. I really do. And we did the same thing in our family's business, but they're not your family. They are your employees, and that doesn't mean you treat them awfully. You treat them well, you're kind to them, you help them any way you can, but to understand that there is a barrier there. They're not your family, or not to think of them that way, because then that can create all sorts of
because now you have emotional ties to them now, which
exactly.
it's hard, a lot easier said than done to say say that.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And I want to be really clear about that. It's it is easier said than done, because we're kind of sitting at a little bit of a distance here. But when you're in the muck of it and you've got people who have been with you 20 years who have been busting their tail day and night for you, and they are dedicated to you, and then you realize, oh my gosh, they may not be able to help my family. They might not be able to take my business to where it needs to go. That's heart-wrenching. I mean, and not dealing with that in an open, honest way can really compromise the business. So you bring up a really good point. Those types of things, that can be really compromising situations. And so that's thinking big picture, understanding, am I a family member, am I a business owner, am I an owner? In whatever situation is, and understanding where the tensions are that naturally happen. Then we move into building value. All right, this whole idea of building value. And the way in which I define building value is creating a business that's easily transferable, whether you're going to pass it off to a family member or to a key employee or an ESOP, or exit the business entirely. Because there's a lot of businesses out there that have great revenue. All right, they make a lot of money and they provide a really great lifestyle for the family. But if the owner or the family steps away, the business will fold, because it's so dependent on them.
Because they are the business.
They are the business. You're absolutely right. They are the business. Everybody, you may have a sales team, but they're still going to call the Brett, the owner, because they know Brett and they can trust Brett. Doesn't matter how often Brett says, "Don't call me, call my sales guy. He'll take care of you." They still call you, and so because they're so dependent on that relationship. So when we're thinking about looking at how a business is valued, it's really in its intangible assets. It's human capital, the quality of its people and its leadership team. It's its customer capital. Do they have a wide and deep customer base, or is 80% of the business reliant on one customer? And are those relationships secured by contracts? You've got your structural capital. Are your systems and processes, do you have your training, your documentation down? Is your intellectual property, protected? The things that really make the business run. And then you've got your social capital, which is the reputation, the community, and the culture. That's where so much of the value of a business is. It's in that intangible stuff that really happens. And so it's making sure that as you're growing your business, that you're keeping an eye on, that you're building value in those intangible assets. That means investing in your people, keeping your software systems updated. It's investing in stuff that doesn't always really hit the bottom line, but adds to the overall efficiency and productivity of the business. And the last one is to think long term. So many family businesses, practically all the family businesses, when we think about it, are privately held companies. So they're not subject to shareholder whims as far as quarterly reporting, the stock market, and all that kind of stuff. So family business can take the long term. They can decide, we're going to invest all of our money and all of our profits back into the business for the next 3 years because we want to grow it. And we're okay if we don't take dividends, we don't take anything out of the business. So they can take that long term, and the only people they have to answer to is the family. And so that is really, in many ways, is a strategic advantage to a family business, is that they can take that long-term view free of all the crazy market forces that go on that cause larger corporations, publicly held corporations, to do a bunch of shenanigans with bookkeeping or how they do business. And so thinking about long-term is another strategic advantage for a family business.
So Kyle, if somebody were, exploring the idea of transitioning their family business, would those be the key points that they would need to have well-defined and be very focused on going into this process, do you think? Or is there others that they really need to, in addition to that they really need to be able to say, hey, we need to get this figured out and be well-defined with this?
Well, I think those are they're great guidelines. But if, let's say, you are a baby boomer business owner, you're between 55 and 70, and you are thinking about, okay, I need to start thinking about transitioning my business, even though it may be another 5 to 10 years, whatever the time frame is. You, first of all, want to think about, what do I want my next chapter to be like? All right. And that's a really hard thing for, a business owner, for many business owners to think about. All right. Because it's a little bit of dreaming, it's a little bit of visioning, but it's absolutely clear about what is that next chapter going to be like. Is it going to be, hey, I'm just going to hang out with the grandkids and maybe take a trip, once a year? Or do I want to have 3 homes all around the world and I vacation? All right. It's getting very clear on what that next chapter is going to look like. All right. So you start with the personal. All right. Then you've got to think about valuing the business. All right. How much am I going to be able to get for my business, whether I pass off to the kids or whether I sell it or whatever. So you've got to think about a business valuation. So you have a valuation of the business done. With that, you also have to think about, what is this next chapter going to cost me? All right. You got to put a price tag on it. And so you got to think about all those things about not just what is my daily living going to cost, health insurance, taxes, all of that stuff. And so that's where you need a good wealth manager to guide you and help you figure that out. Because so often there is a gap between what the price tag for the chapter is going to cost for that next chapter in your life and what the business is going to deliver to you. And then you have to think about, how am I going to make up that gap? And so that's really kind of where you have to start. One of the mistakes that so many business owners will make is like, I'm going to sell my business and then I'll figure out the personal. I'll figure out what I'm going to do. What happens if you sell your business And then you realize, holy cow, I don't have nearly enough money to support me for 10 years, let alone for 30, whatever the case may be. And so it's really spending a lot of time and thinking about, how am I going to spend my day? What's my life going to look like?
So, thinking about it kind of from, it's must do's and then things to be maybe on the flip side of that, to be really cognizant of and aware of and to be watching out for when going through a transition. What are some things that you've experienced that people have maybe overlooked or have caused a lot of heartache or grief, or have even possibly taken a transition and canceled it because they did not have certain things done? They were not looking out for certain things.
First of all is be absolutely clear that you're ready to make the move. Okay, because what you don't want to have happen, it's so common, and talking to brokers and private equity folks, is you get to the point where you sign the deal and you can't pull the trigger. All right, because you're not psychologically ready to walk away from your business. And so the first thing is to make sure, am I really ready? After I've researched all my options, am I really ready to sign the deal and walk away? All right. That's one thing. I think the other thing is trying to do it on your own. Okay. Or saying, oh, I'll just talk to my CPA, or I'll just talk to a business broker and I'll list the business and sell it. All right. There's so much more that goes into it around estate planning and taxes and legal considerations. You need to have a team of people around you to help you execute on this. Also, not doing this in secret, not talking to your employees. Because quite honestly, if you're, 60 to 70 years old in the business, your key employees are probably close to your age. They're close to your age as well, your age, or maybe even older. Everybody is thinking about, well, what's he going to do with the business? What about our future? Is he going to be around? Is he going to sell it? Even though no one's talking about it, people are thinking about it, especially if you're in that 60 to 70-year-old range. People want to know. And so to be okay talking about it, saying, even if it says, I don't know, just say, I don't know yet. All right. Because at least then you're being open and honest about that you are thinking about it. I also would encourage people to see it as an opportunity. All right. See it as an opportunity to completely reinvent yourself, reinvent your life, reinvent your business. Think about it as an opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean on what's possible. Because if you've been in the business for 20, 30, 40 years, you've got blinders on. And one of the great things about a transition is it's really an opportunity to step back and think about, well, what's really possible? Okay. What's really possible for this to happen, and not think that passing it off to the kids is your only option. All right. There's a whole variety of ways in which you can do this. The other, and one thing is, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to retire. I'm actually not a fan of retirement. I saw what it did to my dad, because when he stopped working, all of his health problems just accelerated. Because the thing we have to remember, Brett, is that work gives us more than a paycheck. Work gives us structure, it gives us purpose, it gives us connection, and it gives us status. Okay. And some of that's ego, wrapped up in ego. And I'm just like, let's be honest about it. All right. Because that just the way it is, and that's okay. And so when you think about a transition, how are you going to replace that structure, purpose, connection, and status? Because that is very important to who we are as human beings. It's especially important to business owners. So it's very possible that maybe you set the business up and you pass it off to the kids, but you have a very defined role. And so maybe you're not there 40 hours a week, you're only there 20 hours a week, and you are doing specifically X, right? So that you're still involved in the business, but you have a clearly defined role and responsibility of what you're doing. That's very possible. Or maybe you and the family might realize, we ought to sell the business and start something else. We're tired of doing what we're doing. We can sell it, make sure our employees are well taken care of with the next company. And let's go find something else to do with the money. Okay, so that doesn't mean you have to sell it all and just go vacation all the time. You can start another business or start philanthropy or whatever it is. And so it's really important to have those conversations with everybody and really think about, well, what's possible? What can we do that we've always thought about doing, and now we have the opportunity to do it.
And Kyle, if any listeners out there want to get in contact with you to have further discussions about family business and transitions, what's the best way to do that?
I have two pieces to my business. There's my family business side, and then there's also the EOS implementation side. Solutionsforfamilybusinesses.com. That's my online website or website for all things family business. I've got 90 articles there. I've got some white papers. I've got some books, ebooks that people can download and certainly access. So there's the solutionsforfamilybusinesses.com. If you go to kyledanner.com, you can go and learn more about how EOS can help you in a family business transition or how it can help you grow your business. And the easiest way to get a hold of me is kyle@kyledanner.com. And quite honestly, Brett, the thing that I tell folks about all the time is a lot of times I'll have a conversation with a business owner or a family member for an hour or so, and that's fine. That's fine. But if you're kind of sitting there scratching your head, what should I do or how do I go about this? Call me, email me, reach out. I'm happy to spend some time with folks just to kind of give them some ideas to get them started. Even if we don't ever work together again, that's all right. At least you're starting to take action. You're starting to move in the right direction.
And Kyle, before I let you go, do you have any other closing thoughts you want to share with the listeners?
I'll say this. I get that this is a really hard transition. To everybody who's listening, I was in the business for 17 years, and I would say for a good chunk of that time, it wasn't the place for me, but we didn't know how to talk about it. All right. And we were very much, working class. You get your butt out of bed and you work hard. You take care of your employees, you take care of your customers, and you do it all again the next day. And so it was very much, I was there out of a sense of obligation to my family. I don't regret any of that. It was a fantastic education, very nice lifestyle. And I worked with a great group of people, but it wasn't the best fit for me. And so there are ways in which you can exit the business and do really well. It is also, when you think about a transition, it is really an opportunity to completely reinvent the family and the business, and to think differently about everything. And so anybody who's thinking about that, it's truly an opportunity to envision something different for your family and for yourself and for your business. And so don't be afraid of it.
Kyle, I want to thank you again for taking time today to share with me and share with the listeners.
Brett, I really appreciate the opportunity. For anybody who's out there who's listening, who works in a family business, I totally understand how you feel. Brett, you know how they feel too. Again, the invitation is there. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here to help. It's what I enjoy doing. It's my passion.
It speaks volumes just from our conversation. Thanks again, Kyle.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate the opportunity.
This is the Building the Future podcast. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe. Please like and share. You can find out more at our website, www.buildingthefuturepodcast.com. Together we are building the future.